This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It is season number 3. It is episode 26 of the Fly the W670 podcast. And this is the Fly the W Cubs prediction episode. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook. Email Crawly and I, flythew670@gmail.com. All right, buddy, here we go. We are right around the corner. How do they say it? Two more sleeps, Crawly. We've got a Cubs opener.
Yep, 2 more sleeps. I'm still in Austin, and then tomorrow I take off for Arlington, and Thursday opening day, the first of 162. And oh man, this is, like I said, I feel excited about this season. You know, we didn't know what to expect last year. I think in 2023, we knew they were going to be better than 2022. And if you would have told me at the beginning of the 2023 season that the Cubs were 1 game away from the playoffs, I would have taken it, but it did end up a little disappointing. But now I think that the ante is raised, and I think we can expect better things this year from the Cubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think onward and upward. Decent offseason, not a fantastic offseason, but decent. And obviously a new skipper in charge of the whole thing.
Absolutely. Now, if you looked at The Athletic, they graded the Cubs offseason. They did it kind of at the midway point, and they did it recently. They gave them a grade of B, which I would say is fairly accurate. The only other NL Central team that high was the Reds, who also had a B. Everyone else had grades of C or lower. We saw, Dustin, the Cactus season end on Sunday, and the Cubs finished in 14th place with a record of 16-4-3. They did have a little rough patch to end it, Dustin, going 3-6-1 in their last 10. I think they were really sad when I left and they didn't see me when they were walking along the Performance Center, because that last week definitely was not pretty. But, you know, when you look at the individual numbers this spring, Dustin, there are a few that stand out to me, and I wanted your thoughts on some of these. Seiya Suzuki, 17 for 37 with 5 doubles, 6 home runs, and 12 RBIs. Dustin, we watched Seiya be the most important offensive player the last month of the season to get them that close to the playoffs. I keep wondering, is this going to be Seiya's breakout year?
Right. That's a great question. All I can say is obviously those numbers are awesome. Those numbers matter, at least to me, the fan. I hope they matter to Craig Counsell. I hope they can be somewhat replicated when the games count. Now, Crawly, I think what's going to be very interesting is where exactly does Seiya Suzuki bat? And at the moment, I think it could be anywhere from 2nd, 4th, or 5th.
I have him 4th in my sketched out cocktail napkin lineup there. I got him there. So, I was also impressed with Miles Mastrobuoni. You know, he did make the roster, and we'll talk about that later. He went 12 for 44 with 2 doubles, a homer, 3 RBIs, and he stole 4 bases. I know he gets, he's a punching bag to a lot of people, but I think that there's something there, and I think the Cubs see it as well. And then, Dustin, any concern with Nico Horner?
I'm one of those guys that's been, with the right and the left, and maybe even a kung fu kick to a Miles Mastrobuoni. He was in way too many of David Ross's lineups for me, but he can cover you at 3rd. He can cover you at short. He can cover you at 2nd. I'm guessing in a pinch, he can cover you in a corner outfield spot. He does run the bases well. This team loves defense. They prioritize defense. So in that case, I get it. I just don't want him in the lineup ahead of healthy guys right now.
I mean, I think it's all going to come down to rest, and when you look at this, Miles Mastrobuoni's played 60 games. He ended up, Dustin, with 13 stolen bases. So that was more than Ian Happ, more than Cody Bellinger, or a little less than Cody Bellinger, and playing a lot less games. So the speed factors there, left-handed bats there, I don't think he's going to be playing all the time. But I also don't believe that you're going to see the same lineup day in and day out from Craig Counsell.
No, I think it'll change quite a bit. I don't think Miles Mastrobuoni will be taking bats away from guys like Nico Horner, from obviously Dansby Swanson, Christopher Morel. Maybe he's in there because he's the best option at third base if they decide Morel is a better option at DH because they want to keep his bat in the lineup. But it just seems like there was something going on between Miles Mastrobuoni and David Ross. He played way too much for my liking. Anyway, we'll move on.
Any concern about Nico Hoerner? 9 for 47, 4 RBIs, slashing 191, 208, 277.
Well, I think the part that's curious, or the part that I'd be concerned about, is where are they going to bat him in the lineup? Based on those numbers, he's not a leadoff hitter, Crawly. That can't be your leadoff hitter. And I think they, as an organization, liked him as a leadoff hitter. I have no idea where Craig Counsell's going based on the criteria that I heard him lay out on the score with the Parkins and Spiegel show. Ian Happ would be the guy that I would think is more of Craig Counsell's style for a leadoff hitter, because right now Nico Hoerner's not putting the bat on the ball enough to be a leadoff hitter.
No, but he did lead last year in average and in hits, stuff like that. But again, to me, with Ian Happ and his ability to get on base, and maybe he leads off with the home run like he did in Miami in 2018, I would really like to see Nico batting right behind him, because I think Nico's really a guy that gets those hits, pushes a runner along, can do a lot of the little things that you would traditionally look for in a number 2 hitter. Out of all the starters,
we can play the lineup Easter game all day. I love playing the lineup Easter game, and my number 2 hitter based on spring training, would actually be Seiya Suzuki, and I would agree with you that I have Ian Happ leading off.
Yeah, with Seiya, I still kind of, the way that I kind of picture it is, when you have Nico or Ian Happ leading off, and then you go with Nico, and then I like Cody Bellinger 3rd, and then I like Seiya 4th, and that way you got guys on base ahead of those 2 guys. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, yeah. And then I guess I'd ask you, where is Contreras batting, or not Contreras? Where's Morel batting? I'd ask you that question. But that's the beauty of this. There could be all kinds of mixing and matching, and we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Right. Now, out of all the starters, Justin Wicks had the best ERA. He got rewarded with that as he got the 5th starter spot. And then Drew Smiley really struggled. He'll be in the bullpen. But Dustin, we've had a lot of listeners that may have been paying attention to Justin Fields and the Bears, and may have been paying attention to Patrick Williams and the Bulls, or Connor Bedard. So for all those listeners jumping back, maybe from the NFL or NBA, or maybe this March Madness, I would say that there were 5 major offseason stories that Cub fans should have been interested in. I label them from 5 to 1, from least important to most important. I don't know if you agree with the list here, but I'm going to go ahead and roll this right here. I put at number 5, when the Cubs, when you were looking at it, they were really not doing a lot. Like our offseason shows, we were sitting there pulling our hair out, as you saw these guys flying off the board. And it wasn't until January that the Cubs trade for Michael Busch and they sign Shota Imanaga all within 24 hours. And all of a sudden, that was right that week of CubCon, you remember? And that just kind of jolted Cub fans awake there.
Yeah, listen, right now, I like the Michael Busch move. Again, keep on doing what you did in the spring. Make sure that you take Arizona, you put it in your duffel bag, and you start out by putting it on the plane, air rickets, if you will, and get yourself down to Arlington and put on a show for Crawly and his buddies Thursday night.
Absolutely. But, the Cubs got Michael Busch and Yancy Almonte. They exchanged Jackson Ferris and outfielder Zaire Hope, but both of those guys were years away from being able to produce. Dustin, with Busch, you got the 6th-ranked Dodger prospect. He's blocked by Freddie Freeman. The list of Cubs first basemen, and I know you hate this, since Anthony Rizzo got traded, just Frank Schwindel, Alfonso Rivas, PJ Higgins, David Bodie, Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer, Eric Candelario. I mean, all of these guys, they got to find stability. And, that trade with Busch, you're hoping to answer that question. But then it brings up another question. And wasn't Matt Mervis, who was, 2022 minor league player of the year, just kind of seems like he's gotten lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, it looks like he is getting lost in the shuffle, not even good enough to be the DH or the DH off the bench, if you will, the Cubs, and maybe that move's coming up. But the Cubs made another move at that position in the offseason as well. It wasn't just Michael Busch that they added into the first base mix. they added another guy who made the roster. We'll talk about him in a little bit. So, Matt Mervis is probably thought of right now as the fourth best first baseman in the Cubs organization. That means that Cody Bellinger, who's your everyday center fielder, would probably even be ahead of Matt Mervis in that first base spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the other big stories was the Cubs signing Shota Imanaga, the pitching philosopher. $53 million guarantee, the 5th-year term team option could make that contract $80 million. But it was a really good deal that they didn't pay too much. There's opt-outs for the Cubs. There's opt-outs for Imanaga. I think it was probably one of a couple of good contracts that Jed really I think this was really Jed's best season as far as offseason. He didn't overpay. He got what he wanted for the prices that he wanted for the contracts he wanted.
I would agree wholeheartedly. He had a really nice offseason from a business standpoint. There's a couple swings and misses, if you will. There's a guy that ended up somewhere else that I've been banging the drum. I really wanted Jorge Soler here as the DH, and he didn't cost a whole heck of a lot of money. And I'm worried that that's going to be the one Cubs Achilles heel, if you will, is that position, because they're going to kind of put a Band-Aid on that thing and nickel and dime that thing all the way through the season at this point.
Yeah. Now, when you look at Imanaga, during 2023, he allowed 2.80 earned run, 9 through 148 innings. He led all NPB hurlers with 174 strikeouts. That was even a little bit more than Yamamoto, who I was into. And Dustin, I think we both loved that press conference. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? I mean, that was just so much fun.
Absolutely.
Right at CubsCon, the Friday at Cubs convention, right?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
I think the number 4 story for Cub fans this offseason, Christopher Morel named the starting third baseman. Last year, he slashed 247, 327, 771 with 26 home runs and 70 RBIs, even though he spent the first month of the season with Iowa. But Dustin, he was a man without a position in 2023. He DH'd, he played second, all 3 outfield spots, third base, and shortstop. So he DH'd 61 times. He played 24 games in the outfield, but only 5 at third base. But once the Cubs hired Craig Counsell, I kept hearing more and more. I remember at the winter meetings and then later on from Jen Carter at CubsCon that he's going to be playing everyday third baseman. And that's what we saw at spring training. And he also got a little bit of that in the Dominican winter ball.
Right. I guess the other part of this too, Crawly, is, and I don't understand it. I'd love a follow-up if I get the chance to ask these guys, but they said he's too young to be a DH. Too young to be a DH. Is he too green to be a third baseman? That's kind of my follow-up. So I just wonder how long it's going to be until he's not too young to be the DH. I hope it all works out. I hope he's fantastic. I hope he's good enough. He's above average at third base. But right now, he's a big question mark. No doubt about it.
And Dustin, I think, when you say above, we don't even need him to be above average. We just need him to be average. That's it. Doesn't even, with that bat, all you need is average. He played 98 innings at third and made 3 errors this spring for an .875 fielding percentage. Again, Counsell sounds like Morel will have a long leash. But to me, Dustin, the one thing I'm going to watch, especially in April and May, is how quick before he gets a defensive replacement if the Cubs have a lead.
Yeah. Great. It's a great point. Great point by you as usual. Totally agree.
Now, number 3, Marcus Stroman opt-out. We were just pretty much resigned to the fact that Stroman would be back. He signed a 3-year, $71 million contract with an opt-out after 2 years before the 2022 season. He looked really well last season, but the story of Marcus was always injuries here, right? And so he started out the spring the first half of the season really good, got injured right after the London trip, and then he had right hip inflammation. He never really did much in the second half. And with all those injuries, we're like, okay, well, there's no way he's going to opt out because he's making $21 million this year. Is someone going to pay more? And the New York Yankees did. They finalized a $37 million 2-year contract on Wednesday, to get Stroman. So I was shocked that he jumped out of that, and I think that really allowed the Cubs to make that move for Yamamoto.
Hey, if things go the way that we're hoping they go, we might want to have like a little Marcus Stroman patch. Like Bear fans should have a little Lovie Smith patch for winning a game that didn't matter and then getting to overtime and all that. If this goes the way we're hoping, Marcus Stroman might deserve a little patch, if you will.
Yeah. I wish him the best in the, with the Yankees, but, I think it really kind of changed the direction of this team. Now, the number 2 story of the spring, Cody Bellinger returns. Remember last year, he signed a $17.5 pillow contract. He opted out of a $25 million option and entered the market looking like the best hitter, not named Shohei Ohtani. He hit 307, 356, 525 with 26 home runs and 97 RBIs. He was the comeback player of the year. And initial reports had Boris looking for 6 years and north of $200 million. Toronto was in the mix, San Fran, Yankees. But Jed just sat there and bided his time as people were starting to freak out. And it looks like he got Cody at exactly what he wanted him at.
Yeah, I mean, listen, going back to what you said before we started this part of the podcast, I mean, he had a great offseason from a business standpoint. He really, really played his hand of cards really, really well.
Right. And so Bellinger basically comes back. He's got opt-outs after the first and second years. He gets $30 million this season and $30 million next season, and then $20 million if he doesn't opt out after that in the third. But, it leaves an incentive on the table for him to do good, because I think if he has 2 strong years, then he's going to get the contract that he's looking for. Not after one comeback year with the Cubs. He's not getting that, big giant paycheck he was looking for.
No, but he still has the opportunity to earn it, right?
100% with the opt-out. That's what gives him motivation, and that's why it's a good deal for the Cubs too.
You gotta love a motivated guy who's sitting on a potential $200+ million, life-changing type of contract situation.
Now, the biggest story of the year, Dustin, and the one that makes me the happiest, how about the Cubs poaching the rival Milwaukee Brewers manager Craig Counsell? Looked like he might be going to New York, and the next thing you know, Jed pulls a rabbit out of who knows where, a 5-year contract worth $40 million, making him the highest paid manager in MLB. 9 seasons with the Brewers and that patchwork, low spending market. And he won 53% of his regular season games, 5 postseason appearances. And I don't have to tell Cub fans how much he got in the way of things. So that, combined with having to fire manager David Ross, I think really was the big story of the offseason. And you and I have said this many a times on this podcast. The belief between, I think, you, me, and we'd like to think, Jed, is that if Craig Counsell is managing this team last year, the Cubs were in the postseason.
Yeah, they probably are. But I mean, this puts a tremendous amount of pressure on both Craig and Hoyer and Carter for making this move. Okay, I think the way this team is built, it's built because they put their eggs, their cash in the Craig Counsell basket. So now he's got to make something of a team that's got a couple of issues that we all can see. And he has to be the X factor. And
I think that's why he's getting paid what he is. And I don't think just seeing Craig Counsell over the years, whether it was as a player or as a manager, I feel that he thrives on that. And I believe that he is really going to, there's no manager I'd rather have for the Cubs right now than Craig Counsell.
You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season number 3. It's episode 26. Fly the W Cubs prediction episode. Don't forget to listen, download, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast, and leave us one of those 5-star reviews. In this segment, Crawly takes us behind enemy lines, talks to John Moore, one of the hosts of the Rangers Today podcast for Odyssey Sports, to give us a breakdown of all things Rangers and get you ready for the opening set of games down in Arlington, Texas.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special episode, a crossover, if you will. We have John from Rangers Today, and this is me, Crawly, from Fly the W podcast, to get you guys ready for the Cubs Rangers series, the opening series. John, you got to be feeling on 9, knowing that the Rangers are the defending world champions.
Hey, I got to say, it doesn't suck. It certainly doesn't suck right now. Look, I'm a longtime fan. I do get to cover the team like you get to cover your favorite team. It's fantastic. But 74 was my first year to ever go to a Ranger game. I've seen a lot of bad baseball over the years. And now we finally won a World Series, kind of the way the Cubs did a few years back. By the way, just for you to know, I know you're coming into Dallas here. We were just talking about that. My mother-in-law is in town, and my wife is from Illinois. They're both Cub fans. They're Ranger fans too, but they're coming to fly the Cub colors. So I've got a split household tonight, along with the split podcast here.
I love it. I love that you got see Cub fans are everywhere, but like you mentioned before, just to end a drought, for us, 108 years for Cub fans, and it was brutal. But what I'm going to tell you, just from our experiences, I know that the Rangers, it was just a magical moment, and so this whole season for you guys is just going to be, no matter what happens, and you're going to hope for another good run, but there's nothing that's going to kill that buzz that you get the whole season long that you're just really going to enjoy.
Yeah, I totally agree. You can tell, you can see it at spring training. You can tell by the reaction that we're getting on the streets anywhere we go. You can see it all over town. Look, this is the home of the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, you'll see when you get here, the stadium's walking distance from where the Cowboy Jerry World, we call it, or the Death Star over there. And but everything flying right now is all Texas Rangers. You're seeing the banners everywhere. This town really, we have on a lot of players and stuff on our podcast, but so a lot of the 2010-11 Rangers have come on that went to the World Series and lost back-to-back years. And we were talking to them and letting them, Michael Young, Ian Kinsler, David Murphy, those guys. And we're like, look, you guys were the ones that set the expectation that, hey, maybe we can win a World Series. Now they've actually pulled it off. And so this town follows winners. And when you're winning, this entire Metroplex will get behind you and follow you.
Well, I think the interesting thing when we look back at 2023 and this Cubs Ranger series opening 2024, to me, there's like two big themes that I kind of see between both teams. And that's, number one is depth and staying healthy. And number two is when do you get hot? And sometimes when you get hot in the right time, good things happen. For the 2023 Cubs, they started okay in March, April, one game above 500, but then they ended up 8 games below in May. And so at the worst, the Cubs were 10 games under. And then all of a sudden they went on an absolute tear. They're the best team in August, 18-9. And then in September, they ran out of gas. They just didn't have enough to carry the tank. Whereas the Rangers, you guys had a good first month of March, April, 17-11. And May was really good too. But then from June to the end of the season, you were only 3 games over 500. You lose first place, on the last day of the season?
Yep, exactly. So the Rangers pulled into first place at a couple weeks into the season and pretty much held on to it all the way. At one point, it got down to 1 or 2 games, but then all of a sudden you'd look up and they'd be another 4 or 5 games ahead. One of the things that killed the Rangers last year, which not many people know this, they blew over 50% of save opportunities. So had they had any sort of a closer last year or any sort of a bullpen before heading into the playoffs, this team would have finished. They could have finished easily 100, 103, 104 wins. They ended up at 91 or 2. I can't off the top of my head.
90 and 72.
Right. And so we went through streaks there where we would blow 4 saves in a week. And we couldn't figure out that right mix to get the right closer back there. Bruce Bochy, God bless him. He's a miracle worker with a bullpen and what he's got. And this year, so that's one of the highlights coming into this year is the bullpen looks much better to start the season.
And the other thing is the issue of depth that the Cubs, one part of what really hurt them in September is they just didn't have enough guys to give guys rest, being 12 games down and then going 10 games over. And then our bullpen, which was a strength for the team, which was a really young bullpen, half the guys got hurt in September and just they had nobody in the bullpen. And that's what you're talking about, blowing leads. I still can't believe that you guys lost your 2 best pitchers. When you talk about losing Jacob deGrom and losing Max Scherzer and still winning the World Series, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, well, now remember, Scherzer was a deadline deal and came in and did well, but he got hurt. I guess it was right before the World Series, so it was the division series when he went down and didn't come back. And he pitched great for us. Jordan Montgomery was a big save. DeGrom, that was a gut wrencher. He started 6 games at the beginning of the year and looked like the Jacob deGrom we all know. I mean, let's be honest, when the guy's healthy, he may have the best stuff in baseball. But he's got to stay healthy. So this year what's encouraging for the Rangers going into this year is the rotation that kept them in the lead all the way till the end is the same rotation, because Montgomery didn't come till after the deadline, is the same rotation aside from Martin Perez, who's left, and now it'll probably be Cody Bradford, who's a left-hander, kind of the same way, same mold. So that'll be the same. And the lineup, only lineup that's changed out of the lineup this year is that Mitch Garver's gone, went to Seattle. Other than that, it's the same lineup, and it's been a potent lineup.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are, one other thing that I looked at that I thought was interesting is that you got the 2023 Rangers sent 6 players to the All-Star game, which was a franchise record. In 2016, when the Cubs won, they sent 6 players to the All-Star game too.
Yep. And they all started. Nathan Eovaldi got the start. And so they had 6 starters. And, this year we host the All-Star game. So, and so it was amazing. They really and you can say it's Bochy, you can say whatever. They have built from inside as far as the depth of this team right now. They went out and spent a lot of money. And any team, there's 2 currencies, and that. There's money that the owners have, and then there's your farm system, which you can use to get anybody you want. That's another currency. Right now, the Rangers are sitting pretty coming into the season. I love it. Nobody has the Rangers picked to do any good this year. And nobody's got them finishing. I mean, some people got them finishing second in the West. Nobody's picked them to win the West. I love that. They did that last year. I think this team's better than it was last year coming into it. It's fantastic. I see the Cubs kind of in the same boat. They look better coming into the season, and they've got, I saw one pick where they thought the Cubs might win it. The rest of them, they're kind of Cincinnati's kind of getting some pub over there, and they're kind of dismissing the Cubs. And that's the greatest place to be, is that nobody's giving you any credit.
Yeah, and the Cubs, were able to make some moves in the offseason. I know, people talk about losing Heimer Candelario. He was a trade deadline pickup for the Cubs. Marcus Stroman was really great April, May, and the beginning of June, and then he was injured the whole rest of the year. But that gave other guys opportunities. Justin Steele, who is going to be starting in Game 1 versus Nathan Eovaldi, is really, and he made his first All-Star game last year, and he's just a great young story.
Good.
He was drafted by the Cubs in 2014, and he really didn't have a breakthrough until like 2023. So, 2020 or 2022. So 2023 was his big people really kind of turned some heads. And then, they picked up from Japan, Shota Imanaga, who is a lefty. And I got to see him when I went to Mesa, and a lot of deception and a lot of movement on those pitches. So
and that's all you got to do. You don't have to throw hard. If you can change, look at Greg Maddux live that way. If you move it around and change speeds, that's all you got to do is keep these guys off balance. I was hoping the Rangers would get in on Imanaga and didn't, but that's okay. But, like last year when you guys got Seiya, that was one that I was looking for too. Maybe the Rangers go get that bat. Now he's healthy coming in this year, right?
He has hit over 400. I know it's just spring numbers, but
that's still when you can hit, you can hit.
Right. And so the trouble is this could be his 3rd season with the Cubs, but the first one he signed really, really late. And then last season he got injured. And so in spring training, and so he kind of got off to a funky start. He had to start in AAA. And so this year he's come in, he's healthy. He's looked really good. So hopefully, he's one of those guys that if the Cubs are going to do what we hope they're going to do, has to really have that breakout season that we've been waiting. We've seen glimpses of it. Yeah. He was the best hitter for the Cubs in September, but he was benched in early July by David Ross. And so, for us, it's one of those things where we need a full season of the good, say at Suzuki, and that would make a huge difference.
Well, I'm excited. Like I go down to the field before the games, and I get to watch batting practice and all of that. I always look for somebody on the opposing, because like Corey Seager and Simeon, Simeon will always hit out there. Seager won't, but I always there's someone on the other team I'm always wanting to get a good look at and get a close up of, and I'm ready to watch Seiya take batting practice. So I'm excited about that. I've liked him before he signed with the Cubs. I thought the Rangers might go after him. They have a little bit of a presence in the Pacific Rim over there, but he's good. And I know he had the health issues and all of that, but I still think he's going to be someone to watch. He's a good player.
Now, another player that the Cubs added was Hector Neris. You guys know him from his time in Houston, but he's in the Cubs bullpen. Michael Busch is another addition. He was one of the top prospects in baseball, and the Cubs traded the Dodgers. They traded a really promising young arm, but like an 18-year-old arm, and obviously Busch was blocked by Freddie Freeman, so he's with the Cubs. And I think one of the big moves that everyone was waiting for was Cody Bellinger. And so in a weird year where Scott Boras really didn't get what he expected, Jed Hoyer kind of played it well and got Cody on the terms that he wanted. I know you guys have been waiting for Jordan Montgomery. He's still out there, and everyone thought he'd come to Texas, but nothing yet.
So the Rangers are already over the luxury tax right now. And it's not that this owner doesn't mind going over. Look, they're going to make a lot of money this year. They've already sold out so many games that they're going to make a ton of money. But the TV deal the Rangers has ends this year. They are actually been in arbitration with Bally Sports. They finally got it settled to go this year, and they're only getting like 85% of what the original deal was. And then after this year, they don't have anything set in stone. Well, billionaires become billionaires because they know how to run a business. And it's not that they're trying to get rich off of baseball, but they also know they got to pay for these guys. And so, Mr. Davis that owns it, Bob Davis that owns the team, I mean, he is just Ray Davis. I'm sorry. It's Bob Simpson and Ray Davis who own it, and then Neil Liebman. But Ray Davis is not dumb. And I think Jordan won 6 or 7 years at about 25 to 30 million. The Rangers it's not that they don't want to pay 25 or 30 million. They don't go 6 or 7 years on starting pitching hardly ever. I can't remember when they've done it on a starting pitcher. And so that was part of it. Now he'd have to fall back to a 2 or 3 year deal and maybe with an opt out like a lot of these guys are doing now. But they went out today. It broke late last night. They signed Michael Lorenzen, and that's pretty much seals the fate right there. They're still over the tax, but they don't go to that second tier of the luxury tax, which penalizes them more. All they needed, they had a set rotation coming in that's been healthy all spring, looked good. So with Evaldi, John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, and then Cody Bradford is the fifth starter. Now you got Michael Lorenzen, who probably come in there and slide into 4 or 5 once he this is an all-star last year through the no-hitter when he got traded over to the Phillies. He struggled, though, after that, kind of got put back in the bullpen. But, Mike Maddox works wonders with these guys, and he's a big friend of the show and all of that. So, I expect big things out of Lorenzen too. Now he's behind, so he's probably not going to start the year on the big league team. He's just because not injury, just he's got to get ramped up. But what's great about the Rangers is when you're doing trade deadline acquisitions and you're trying to get some starting pitching, they've got it all coming back. They've got Scherzer probably in June. Then they've got Tyler Mahle coming back in July. And by August, they're supposed to be getting Jacob deGrom back. Well, that's all your moves you normally make at the trade deadline. So, look, the Rangers are sitting good for the AL West right now, no matter what anyone says. Now, the AL West may be one of the best leagues in baseball this year.
Yeah, and you talked about last year they had a lot of bullpen issues, and they did address those with Kirby Yates and David Robertson, who was at one time with the Cubs.
Yep. And both of them and been successful. Robertson last year got traded to Miami, I think, and struggled a little bit with them, but they know what to do, and they are there in leverage situations. They've done it. So we've got the two guys that really got us through the playoffs last year were Jose Leclerc and Josh Boers, who both have come back. And then you've got those two that are joining with Kirby Yates, and then there's a guy also, Carson Coleman, that they got. They picked him up off the Rule 5 draft. You ought to see his numbers, AAA and AA. He has saved. He's been he was with the Yankees organization, and the Rangers picked him up in the Rule 5. He's on the 60-day IL coming back from Tommy John too. That's another guy another arm, throws 100 miles an hour, good secondary pitches that they picked up. Now if they don't keep him in the big leagues, they got to offer him back. And he won't be healthy enough to do anything until about midway through the season. But that might be the under the radar signing that happens, or the move.
And one guy for your Ranger fans to think about is a kid named Christopher Morel. He's a guy that can be very streaky, but when the bat hits the ball, it goes a long way. And, the trouble is they didn't feel like they had a really good position for him. And so they're going to put him at third. And now he played a lot of third in the minors, but not really in the majors. And it's looked a little bit sketchy out there, but then all of a sudden you'll see it and boom, 2-run home run, 3-run home run. So, along with Cody Bellinger, Christopher Morel is a guy that, maybe people outside of the NL Central may not know about, but he's a guy that can really do some damage. So he's a fun kid to watch. And again, the bullpen's young, but it has, this is their second year together. And you got Julian Merriweather, who really throws some gas. You got Ed Alzolay, who was converted from a starter. He was in the Cubs farm system and was really, really good last year and looking to take that next step this year. Last year was really his first year as a closer. So we're hoping that, he can, with him, it's just about staying healthy. The stuff is 100% there, but the kid's got some wicked stuff.
And something that both of us have, in fact, the Rangers, you have it too. Is it Pete Armstrong Crow? Is that his name?
Yeah, Pete Crow Armstrong, PCA.
Crow Armstrong. The Rangers probably had 2 of the top 5 American League Rookie of the Year candidates. And of course, everyone saw Evan Carter in the playoffs last year. Got called up right at the end of the season. Really did good through the playoffs and was one of the most valuable players throughout the playoffs. If there wasn't a Corey Seager, he might have been one of the most valuable player on the team. But then Wyatt Langford, if you haven't seen what he's done, he's hitting 380. He's leading all of spring training baseball, whether it's Grapefruit or Cactus League and RBIs. He's got 19 right now. He's hitting 388. He has 6 home runs. He was just drafted last year in the number 4 spot out of Florida. He slid. Everybody thought he was the top. Dylan Cruz was a big name going in and all of that in the draft. And, the Rangers were supposed to pick 7th, but they were in that lottery and got up to the 4th pick. Nobody expected Wyatt Langford to be there. He ended up signing. Or he ended up falling to the Rangers, and it looks like he's breaking camp. He's the best hitter in spring training right now. And
the Cubs do have a couple of guys that are really, really close, and they got the number 2 rated farm system. You mentioned PCA with Cody Bellinger coming back. PCA is only 22, and they're going to let Cody start in center and see how PCA. He doesn't have a lot of at bats at AAA. The other 2 names that everyone's really excited about is Cade Horton and Matt Shaw, 2 guys that, again, were there and the Cubs weren't expecting it. And now people are really regretting. I talked to Jim Callis on the show. He said Cade Horton is probably one of the best pitching prospects in all of baseball. So very, very much a chance that he could come up this year. And Matt Shaw, if it doesn't work out with Christopher Morel at third base, because again, the Cubs have Gold Glovers all up the middle. You got a Gold Glover in left, Gold Glover in center. You have Dansby Swanson at short and Nico Horner at second. So, they've put a really big emphasis on defense. So Christopher Morel is going to have to really kind of show that he's not just a bat, that his glove can play as well.
Yeah, I mean, and what is y'all's system ranked? Is it one of the top 5 systems?
Number 2.
Yeah, we're ranked number 4 or 5, I think, in Baseball America, but we're in the top 5 in every one of them. Hey, the Cubs and the Rangers, I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter what happens in this series. This, whether the Cubs sweep the Rangers sweep the Cubs, or they 2-1 or whatever. Both of these teams are going to be hot teams this year. I'm telling you right now, and you're built within. You've got to have that depth in your system to go along with what you have at the big league level, or to go get what you need. It's exciting. And, with a family that's Cubs, I've been a Cub fan. I've been to Chicago, been to Cubs games. I'm a Ranger fan through and through. And when it comes to the 2, there's no doubt who I'm for. But this is fun. I mean, I don't have sports hate for the Cubs. I've got sports hate for other teams. So, and I hope they sweep the Cubs this week, when they come in for that. But I love the Cubs, and I really like what's happening over there. And so I'm excited to see them. I hope you guys do like us, and let's meet in the World Series and we'll really have a good show. How about that?
Oh, 100%. And here's what I will tell you from my experience in 2017 is that, the season starts Thursday, March 28th. And of course, the Rangers are going to have the trophy ceremony, raising the banner
right.
ceremony to raise that. And I can tell you, I was there at Wrigley when that happened. And after, you know, my dad actually waited 70 years to finally see a team in the World Series, much less win it.
Right.
And that night was so special. I brought this picture up for the podcast listeners. It's a piece I'm getting worked on, autograph. But it was the Cubs came out, they raised the banner. Each guy on the team took a turn pulling it up. And then Anthony Rizzo, who was considered, not officially, but was considered the captain at the time, he finished pulling it up, and they came out to AC/DC, long way to the top, and carried out that beautiful trophy. And it gave me goosebumps. And that's the thing, man, is when that, I guess it was so weird. It was almost like an Indiana Jones feeling to see that trophy for the first time. And you just, it was, you've seen it on TV, but, you know, just to see it in your stadium and, you know, the Red Sox broke their curse in 2004 and the White Sox in 2005. And I don't even want to tell you how many times the Cardinals fans tell me about all their rings, but it sounds dumb, but I always would sit next to these, you know, Cubs or White Sox, Cardinals, Boston fans, and they would always have that World Series champion patch on their jersey. You see a guy with the jersey. And and it's just a stupid patch, but it would just make me so jealous that, you know, that finally when the Cubs won the World Series, we all ran out and got our World Series jerseys, and they're going to do the same with Texas with those beautiful gold names on them and the beautiful gold numbers and the patch. And we're almost coming to 10 years on the 2016, 8 years ago. And I still remember it like yesterday. And all I can tell you is just savor every single moment of the pomp and circumstance, because it's just going to be a lifetime full of memories. And we were all emotional. We cried when the Cubs won it. And then all of a sudden we kind of were like partying for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden these ceremonies came and the banner raising and stuff like that. And it just got, the emotions get to you all over again. And then on no game on Friday, on Saturday will be the ring ceremony.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Cubs kept the ring secret until the day off when they played.
We haven't even got a hint. The players don't have a hint. We've been talking to all the players about it, and they don't have a hint either. Neil Liebman is one of the owners and is the president and I was talking to him. He drives around a little golf cart and he comes over where we are. You get certain areas you can go at spring training and the media. And I'm like, you know, I just asked how his off season was, and he goes, I feel like a jeweler. He goes, with all the stuff I've been doing, and he wouldn't tell us what it looks like. But you know, it's funny. It's great. You're going to be here to watch us get to do what y'all did, and it's going to be so exciting. I remember when the Cubs won, calling my wife's grandmother was a lifelong Cub fan, passed away right before they won. And then, of course, my in-laws and everybody else. So we, you know, obviously I have a Cub hat in the closet.